So I'm currently in Mozambique, but to get here, I flew into South Africa, into Johannesburg. And actually, to get onto the flight, one of the requirements is to do a PCR COVID test at least 72 hours before your flight. My flight was on April 3rd around 5 p.m. So I took it on April 1st around 9 a.m. PCR COVID test, that thing was horrible. The swab goes up your nostril so far up. It's so uncomfortable. It made me cry like almost instantly. It was horrendous. By the time my flight left, I still did not have my results, but everything's online. So I did have the little slip, a little electronic slip saying that I had taken it. It kind of said, that they were waiting on the results, but it wasn't very clear. It's a little confusing to see the results. I think that helped. The people at check-in at the airport, they'll immediately ask you for a passport and the PCR COVID test. So again, I did not have my results yet, but I was hoping by the time I reached South Africa, when potentially they would actually want to see the results of the PCR test, I would get my electronic results in, and it did happen. So as soon as I landed, I connected to Wi-Fi and I checked my patient portal, and there were my results that I was negative. At the same time, I'm vaccinated, so I didn't think my result would come back positive, but that's also a gamble that you're willing to take. If you have your PCR test and you don't have your results before you get on the flight, it is a gamble that it might come back positive and they might have you quarantined. So just a heads up. Just went through the luggage line, the check-in line, got my tickets, ready to go. They definitely are checking for your PCR test. And then you also have to do a health screening questionnaire to enter South Africa. To be honest, the check-in line was pretty stressful, mostly because the people doing the check-in process, checking your PCR test, and if you had filled out the South African questionnaire, mostly because they were stressing out, and there weren't a lot of people. The airport's pretty empty. Made it to the other side, about to board now. We'll see how packed it is. We are not in business class.
Another thing to note is that while my Qatar flight did have the social distancing seating, literally within 2 days of arriving, I was listening to the news and they were indicating that not just with Qatar, but with many other airlines that also practice social distancing on board, they had to fill up the flights because people were just buying tickets nonstop. And so it went from just a few travelers to a sudden boom. So another thing to note as you're planning your trip is that a lot of people are getting vaccinated. A lot of people are starting to take that flight risk again. So just making sure that you're aware of what the seating will actually be like in case you're not vaccinated or if you're in one of those higher risk categories.
third, fourth time in Doha Airport. I really like it because it's super clean and they always have some cool artwork as well, like this guy.
So to recap, getting into South Africa was not very difficult. You definitely just need your PCR test at least 72 hours before the second leg of your flight. And make sure you have a copy of that, whether that's a paper copy or an electronic version. However, if you're planning to travel to other countries while you're in South Africa, definitely do your research because some borders will only accept paper copies. So it'll be good to maybe potentially have a paper copy on hand or get one before you plan on crossing any borders. That happened to me in Mozambique, but luckily I was able to print one at the border. But again, definitely make sure that you know what the requirements are as you're going from one country to the next, if that's what you're planning on doing. I only stayed in Mozambique for a few days and then came back to South Africa. I've been loving South Africa. It's been amazing. I'll be posting up a South African highlights video, a video on what it was like to get into Mozambique because that was quite an adventure. Also, what it's like to travel during COVID times. And in addition to those videos, I'll be posting a video on essentials to bring while you're backpacking or traveling, and also the best gear to protect all your stuff during all your adventures. All of my gear is waterproof, just because I wanted to be sturdy and protective of all my stuff. So I just want to share that to make sure that your stuff is also protected. I definitely think it's essential to be able to bring what you love, but also protect it while you're adventuring. So stay tuned for all those videos, subscribe to make sure that you stay up to date and catch those videos as they're released. Catch you next time on the next adventures.